Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Progress America Unfiltered. This is RHETT here with Linda, Brad, and Craig to talk a little bit about the Threads app. You may have seen a common thread throughout this channel, and that is that we have digital experts here from the progressive movement that are residents on our channel, Progress America Unfiltered, which is really exciting stuff because whenever like a new platform or a new thing comes out, or whenever Elon Musk is doing something wild with Twitter, I always have like the best group of people to consult with and ask all the questions that I have when it comes to um, when it comes to just what's going on with social media. So I can really, avoid watching things like the news, which are stressful, and just turn to the group here to ask all the questions that mean so much to me and all of you out there. So for like a little history on social media, I'm going to pass it over to my dearest friend, Linda. Linda's going to give us a little rundown on the history of social media and what got us to the Threads app today. Linda, what is up?
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a bit, especially about Twitter, which is a specific kind of social media where, unlike, say, Facebook, it's not mainly about people talking to their friends, and it specifically attracts a lot of journalists, policy people, including both policy experts, but also people who are at the White House, congressional staffers, members of Congress themselves are often running their own Twitter feeds. So these are the people who are making policy and shaping the country. But then also a lot of people are on Twitter or were on Twitter who did not have a lot of representation before in the media, including a lot more women, people of color, other marginalized groups, folks who don't come from super wealthy backgrounds. And so especially in the early days of Twitter, this was really exciting and had a lot of democratizing potential compared to beforehand. Really, a few institutions like the editorial boards of major newspapers and the editors at those same places just had a huge amount of control over the media narrative and over what policymakers thought. And so one really big example is that in the early Obama years, when Twitter existed but was still pretty small and not that influential, there was a huge turn towards austerity in the wake of the Great Recession. And that was really driven by places like the Washington Post editorial board and a small group of media elites, the kind of people who fill the room at DC cocktail parties. And in the Biden years, we have not seen the same turn towards austerity. And I really think that's because the kind of people who make policy are folks who've been on Twitter for a long time and influenced by a much larger variety of voices. Like, some people will say that social media and Twitter specifically is a bubble, and that's true, but it's at least a larger and more diverse bubble than the one that existed beforehand. But the issue is that in relatively recent years, the right has realized that they could weaponize Twitter as well. And in particular, with the takeover of Elon Musk, it's just their algorithm has been gamed to completely amplify Nazis, bigots, and it's no longer the useful tool that it once was. And so now we have a new app, Threads, that I know some of the other folks are going to talk about, but my hope is that it can bring over the best of Twitter and not the worst.
Absolutely, Linda. And while we were prepping for the show, we saw that we have kind of a variety of opinion here when it comes to the Threads app. We have Brad, who is more con Threads, Craig, who seems to be enjoying Threads a little bit more. I don't know where I necessarily fall on this spectrum, or should I say the red. I am killing it with the dad jokes today, y'all.
Oh boy,
like,
Red.
We have a little
Jesus.
ticker going on.
Oh my
I know,
God.
I know.
I didn't know you adopted a kid already, Red. Jeez.
Yeah,
well
no, that'll come. I'll do a child review, or I'll do a review.
I love that. I wish I could review my child.
Yeah, or no, a reveal on here. You know, when everybody does like the big reveals, that's gonna come for sure. But when it comes to Threads, something that I noticed is like, so I signed up for Threads, and as soon as I opened it up, I saw ads for things that I care about. I saw that they added like a stupid little number into my Instagram bio that is just so irritating. I think it's so ugly. And I know you can't delete Threads without deleting your entire Instagram. I know that's a little bug as well. To start it off, let's pass it to... Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And on that, let's pass it to Craig, who can get into the details a little bit more with the Threads app.
All right, I'm going to give you...
Why he seems to like it.
Thank you, Linda, for that wonderful history. I largely agree. I would only add that, like, the internet itself has always promised to be a democratizing effect, and it has failed at every step. And so I want to say that my pro-Threads stance is not so delusional that I think that it is in any way going to have any impact on the structural issues of our society. It's not. But I do think that, and the stance I'm taking is that it is the most promising alternative to Twitter that is out there. And the turn that Twitter has taken in the few months that Elon Musk, I guess it's now coming up almost a whole year, has wholly made the platform worse in every regard. And it sort of like illuminates how much we underestimate the usage in the fan base for these social media platforms, because I think people have been predicting the end of Facebook, the end of Instagram, the end of Twitter or whatever for years. And even when they have a leader that has managed to do literally everything possibly wrong, making you log in to view tweets, restricting the amount of tweets you can view in a day, which is insane. The fact that you now have to pay so much money for an API when the third-party API applications are what made Twitter useful and newsy in the first place, are all just like, how do you destroy it? And yet it's still there. And yet reporters and journalists and major institutions are still breaking news on the platform. So it kind of shows you the power and the stickiness of it. And the reason why I like Threads is because I don't think that Zuckerberg's a very smart man, but he knows how to copy something when it becomes apparent, right? Like he's not smart, but he's not an idiot either. So he's like, oh, that dude's doing everything you could possibly do to drive away advertisers and to drive away users. All I have to do is make a simple clone of it and make it easy to sign up. Oh, I got 1 billion users. I got 500 million. I looked it up. 500 million daily active users on Instagram. All I got to do is convert a fraction of those into another social media platform, and advertisers will love it. And I have the best advertising platform out there, because we can all say whatever we want about Facebook, but it is the best advertising platform from a business perspective in terms of targeting out there. I got borrowed frowns, but if you've ever used Google AdSense, it's fucking atrocious.
But
the display ads are really ineffective.
But that gets to my issue. Like, who is it good for? Is it good that it's good exclusively for advertisers? Or is it good for, I don't know, people? Like,
it was never meant to be good for people.
This is my issue with it. Threads is copying the worst of Twitter. Twitter at its best was sort of a digital town hall. It was chronological. You could follow the news as it was breaking on the site. They tried to make it later into more of a money-making outfit, and people sort of fought back, insisting they keep the chronological aspect of it, which is why it's still relevant, which is why when news is breaking, people are still going to Twitter. Nobody's going to Threads. Nobody's going to Blue Sky for breaking news. It's still Twitter. Threads is never going to get that market unless they build in some sort of search, unless they're building a chronological timeline, which they're already resistant to. There's a reason they're resistant to it. It's because it doesn't make them money. And this is, sure, it's going to be a great money-making platform, but that doesn't mean it's going to be useful. It'll mean it's just brands stroking each other off, which is what it already is. And if that's what you're into, cool. If you're into just influencers, I want to talk to people that have access to policy, that insiders and stuff, and newsiness. Threads is already anti-news. It's anti being a public town hall, which is.
See, I think they're going to have to change that stance of being.
That's not what the tweet said, by the way. I don't know why you say they're anti. They're just not pro. Now you can read that as anti, but
that's what Twitter was. And if you're going to mimic Twitter one for one, that's what you're going to have to do. Threads is something else. Threads is not a Twitter clone by any stretch of the imagination. It's in some ways closer to Instagram, I think.
No, if they want an audience long term, they're going to have to accept news and politics as a major focus and bring over at least some of the features from Twitter. That's because long term, like if it's just supposed to be about brands, posting fashion, whatever, like all of that can be done better on Instagram, which focuses on pictures. The point of a text platform is to focus on news and politics, and if they want this to be successful long term, they're going to have to accept that.
I agree. I don't think they will. That's all I'm saying. I think they've had a lot of time already to work on this, and this is what they want it to be.
I don't think they've had that much time. I think that's like somewhat of you would think they would have more time.
We've been hearing about this for a while coming out.
Threads? Yeah, I know. 8 months. As soon as Elon Musk bought Twitter, he was like, oh, here's an opportunity. But 8 months is not a long time to deal with the level of technical complexity. Like Twitter itself, if you weren't trying to integrate it into an ad platform and to an Instagram database, which is now connected to the Facebook database, from a technical perspective, they haven't had a lot of time. That was an exceedingly hard task to do, just to provide the data infrastructure behind what you see. What you see doesn't look that hard.
I don't buy that. The company that patented move fast and break things can move fast when they need to.
Oh, I don't think they can anymore. That's the other thing. Facebook has shown no ability to move fast. They have taken forever
Facebook
to
has been dead for so long.
decisions. But it's not though. Like, well, I don't know why people say that. Like, I have a problem when people say that, because you look at their daily active users or their daily monthly users, and it's still 1 billion people. So if that's a dead platform, then like every every site and every platform that is not a top 10 most visited website in the world is also a dead platform.
Because it's still a zombie. Zombies still move around, but they're functionally dead.
1 billion daily active users.
Is it daily or monthly?
Yeah, I think that
monthly. Sorry,
that's a big.
I think they still have more daily active users than Instagram on Facebook. This is Googleable. Facebook daily active users. 2 billion daily active users.
Because we've had over a decade of it being built into every single website on this planet.
But to say that it's like a zombie is just like a gross, like, it's a zombie to people who use it for political action.
Right.
And the people we've talked to, those are two different things.
Right. It's about who's your bubble, who's your group. But I'm in, say, a Facebook group called Trader Joe's Recipes for Busy People, and I'm telling you, that thing is incredibly active. Just, dozens and dozens of posts a day, hundreds of comments on each one. So
that gets to the point of what we're talking about here. Are we talking about using these platforms for social good, or are we talking about it for being, I don't know, a community where you can like have access to advertisers? Facebook's always going to be great for that. But as a tool for social good, it's not useful anymore. Whereas Twitter even still is.
Is social good sharing your best Trader Joe's recipes?
More political good.
Okay. Well,
that's what we're here for, right? That's our raison d'etre on the show.
It is our raison d'etre on the show, but like, that's why I like Threads. It's because they say they're not going to, but do you know what my feed's full of? News and politics. And so, like, I don't think you're going to have a choice. And I'm not that bothered by the chronological issue. Mainly because Twitter hasn't been that chronological. You can set it to chronological like you have, Brad.
Yeah.
But for most people who use Twitter, it's not. It's an algorithm-based feed.
Oh, I don't buy that whatsoever.
It is. I can prove it to you.
Okay.
I mean, I can literally show you the Twitter algorithm, like, code. Where
it's not that's fine. You have the ability to switch it very easily back and forth. That's what I'm saying. When
you can. Most people don't, though.
When there's breaking news, you can follow it.
It always shows up first. But breaking news shows up in Threads first for me, too.
Interesting.
And that's what I'm saying.
That's what I have not seen yet. And I'm judging Threads on my first impression. I'm not judging Threads on what I think it might be in the future once they wise up.
I think they are going to wise up.
I hope so. I hope so.
I think there's too much money in it, too.
Yeah.
Because, like, talk about advertisers, is like, Twitter's still around, even though he's done his gosh darn best to, like, make them go away, didn't he? Like, so, like, I think they're going to be like, it's going to be the same on Facebook. They've really de-emphasized politics, which I don't think is such a bad thing. And I don't think that eliminating some of the politics from our social media platforms is such a terrible. I don't think we should be listening to everyone.
I hope they do in a way, but what we've seen so far on Threads is these same Nazis from Twitter coming over and testing the boundaries of Threads. And we've already seen Threads whitelisting people like libs of TikTok who get trans people killed. But they're whitelisting them because they don't want that backlash from conservatives. So they're basically letting them say whatever they want right now on Threads. So how is this better than Twitter at this point?
No, the difference is Twitter is boosting libs of TikTok intentionally in your algorithm, right? Like in Threads, sure, they're there, but that doesn't mean that they're not getting any kind of priority. And if people,
and you can't report them for hate speech.
The user base,
they ignore you if you report them for hate speech.
Yes,
that's deeply problematic.
Yeah. I mean, it is, but I think given the experience we've had with Twitter and like what happens when you have a billionaire who truly has no like incentive to do anything that you want versus a billionaire in which you can influence his decisions is a big deal. I mean, both are shitty because
Yeah.
both public platforms are owned by billionaires who are insane
Oh
and
yeah.
definitely don't have the public good at our hearts. But like when I hear this like conversation about how it empowered people of color in particular, I'm like, no, it didn't. No, it didn't. I know that there's Black Twitter out there. I know that there are large Black content, but it doesn't affect change because people in power aren't listening to Black Twitter. And secondly, I don't even think a vast majority of the conversation happening in people of color communities of any kind, Southeast Asian, European, Eastern European to African Americans, is happening in public spaces at all. I think a
See, I
vast
do
majority is
disagree with
happening.
that. Because if you look at the number of Black and other people of color prominent journalists at major news outlets now compared to 10, 15 years ago, and even women, there's a lot more. And a lot of those people came up through Twitter, built their followings there, and then came to those news organizations and said, see, I've got a built-in platform now. Do you want me to, share some of that with you, that audience, or not? Now, I'm not saying that the situation now is great by any means, but compared to what came before, there is more diversity, a wider range of voices, and Twitter played a big role in that.
And
I
if we're
I would
arguing right
really
now that
suspect that correlation. I would be really sus of that.
and we're arguing right now about whether Threads is better because they're not actively promoting, not just letting them say whatever they want. Like,
Yeah,
how can
that's why it's
I
better.
think so, because I think I can win, we can win the war of ideas against Nazis, even if they're not censored, but not if the platform is actively putting its thumb on the scale for the Nazis. That's the difference.
I agree with Linda.
Linda, that really, I think, raises the point of like what role like should government institutions and can government institutions play in regulating platforms like this? So like be it like ridding them of these kinds of like hate speech, of these hate symbols that are like pervasive on the internet. As you say, they're like on Twitter, but they're also making their way over to Threads. Like what role do we think the government can play in regulating this, if any?
I think the First Amendment would probably stop you real quick.
I mean, yeah, they still have policies though, right? That would be employed by the companies themselves to regulate the language on their platforms.
And they theoretically
Right,
have it in place, right? Sorry to over.
Yeah, no one has the right to say what they want on a private platform, so these companies certainly can take steps. And I think, they should have some lines, right? If someone is actively threatening to harm someone else, that should not be allowed. But I do think we have to be somewhat careful because once the companies put these policies in place, like they can be weaponized against the left too. And, if you have Republican lawmakers, we've already seen lean on the companies and say, no, we want you to censor the left and boost the right. And so expecting the companies to, do this too much on their own, to have too heavy of a thumb on the scale of what kind of content is on there, it is a slippery slope and it can go both ways. So
also, it is
think
illegal
that,
already to threaten somebody. Like, it's just illegal to do that. So you don't even need a company policy. It's just not legal. That's a fun part. But yeah, I do think that like if there's going back to the government stuff, we need a reform of Section 230. I personally believe that we should get rid of it completely and make all of these social media platforms wholly liable for what's said on them, to enforce them to do human moderating so that you can't have libs on TikTok getting trans people killed every day. But for reasons Linda brought up, I don't see that happening. But I do. I want them to be liable for everything.
And fortunately, billionaires are so good about keeping to what's within the letter of the law historically. So we should be fine on that. That should be great.
Oh, see, the problem with our social media is that it's a complete mirror and reflection of the problems facing us in society. Just right back at us.
Yep.
So yes, while our conversation about is Threads better than Twitter, a relatively esoteric and in the long-term meaningless discussion. I enjoy it better, Brad. All right,
And
it's a better experience for me.
And I'll see you on Blue Sky.
Yeah, I've never even
No,
heard
you
of
won't,
Blue
because
Sky.
no one's on Blue Sky. I love how
Yeah.
you talk about dead platforms and then talk about the deadest of all.
It's invite only because people have to want your content for you to even get on Blue Sky. So that's what's cool about Blue Sky.
I love it. I guess. I mean,
That
it's
sounds
the
like the
ultimate
dating app
opt-in.
Raya. That was like invite only for celebrities.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Isn't that also like?
I was on it for a little while. I'll say
But
it.
seriously, if they want it to be something, they need to start opening it up. Blue Sky's window is closing quite rapidly.
Oh yeah, I
Wow.
think it's already closed. Just like posts,
Well-
just like all of it.
Yeah, I don't think that, getting to a sort of a wrap up, I don't think any one thing is going to replace Twitter. It's certainly not going to be Threads. There's going to be a market for, I mean, already TikTok is, we haven't even mentioned that. That's basically a replacement for Twitter to a large extent.
Yeah, I've seen people argue that. I'm a bit skeptical that TikTok can really play that role. I mean, there's no chronological feed. It's much harder to follow certain topics, breaking news. You know, it's just not the useful resource for journalists and policy people and for regular people.
But the memes, though.
For the public square, for regular people, I think it's way above.
The memes, though.
Twitter was never for regular people, though.
Oh, see, I disagree with that too.
There's gonna be a part 2 to this show because we got to wrap.
There's got to be a part
definitely
2
be
to
a
the
part
show.
2, maybe a part 3, and I think that's might be where we leave it here for today, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Progress America Unfiltered. Before we actually close out, Brad, Linda, Craig, is there anything else you want to jump in with at the last minute?
Okay.
Speak now or forever hold your peace until the next installment, which is probably in like a week or something.
I will just say that I deeply and sincerely appreciated Linda and Brad's opinions about this, and I'll keep it in mind when I'm doing my work.
Yeah, there you go, everybody. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And we will see you either on Threads, maybe Twitter, who knows. We will see you all very soon. We really appreciate it. Thank you all so much and see you soon. Bye.